In designing an offer for a specific market, you need resources and you need the competencies to use these resources. So you need two things. Therefore, what makes a strategic alliance is perhaps two or more parties exchanging resources or competencies in such a way that it serves the strategies of both parties. Otherwise, for all practical purposes, we will call it perhaps a useful agreement or a cooperation agreement.
What we do is to vehicle money from the private sector toward the microfinance sector. We are a private company based in Geneva. We are dealing with 34 countries around the world. We have invested so far in loans and in equity and microfinance organizations about $650 million. We're very fast growing, doubling our size every year, at least so far. I think it's going to be more difficult from now on. We see our role really as to demonstrate that private money going into the microfinance sector can in fact create what we call a double bottom line. That is, we can at the same time make enough profit to be sustainable ourselves, to continue to be able to lend money and invest money in the microfinance sector, but also have a major social impact. In the world today, the microfinance sector is still growing at about 40% a year on the average. There are 10,000 microfinance institutions around the world, of which I would guess only about 250 are sustainable at this point in time. We think the private sector can easily support the sustainable institutions because they can have a return on their investment, which is a decent return from that sector. But we also see as one of the objectives of our own work and that of other people is to bring more and more of the microfinance institutions into the realm of sustainability. We have made strategic alliances throughout the sector to be able to progress not only what we do, but what the sector does. And I will take one of these. We've made alliances with networks. We've made alliances with NGOs. We've made alliances with other players who have been in the microfinance sector for a long time. But I'll take probably the most striking alliance that we have made, which I think fulfills Osman's definition of a strategic alliance. And that is alliances we have made with the development banks. Development banks have a history of lending money mainly to big projects, dams, industrial plants, automobile knockdown plants, and so on. There's a history of, I would say, mixed success in that area. And I think that there has been an attempt lately to get the development banks interested in microfinance, where they are interested. The World Bank's division, IFC, is a big investor. FMO, the Dutch Development Bank, is a big investor. KfW, the German Development Bank, IDB, the Inter-American Development Bank, are all very heavily involved in the sector, but did not want to work with private enterprise like ourselves to allow a sort of a joint public-private partnership to operate.
I think we can, to my mind, we can view strategic alliances as a kind of a form of investment obviously in each other. And sometimes it can be money, it can be technology, but I suppose principally it sort of infers a fundamental commitment to each other. And it's usually a recognition from firms that it's better to collaborate with each other than to compete, particularly in a certain market when you want to enter a new market particularly. So the first thing obviously is that you can share costs with each other, you share costs amongst partners. And this has been true particularly in the software industry, in the automotive industry, the airline industry to some extent, in the pharmaceutical industry. You can share knowledge, you can share intelligence in entering new markets, especially markets that are sometimes closed or have some limitations. And I think we could see that particularly between multinationals in Japan and the US. The second thing is that you can share technology. Some strategic alliances have failed due to a lack of understanding of the cultural context or other contexts. So for instance, when multinationals move into a new market, they may not do necessarily their homework. To some extent, this was seen in Latin America. So firms need to really become a bit more selective and carefully test out the premises on which they base their strategic alliances. I think is we need to know how and when to intervene, what will stimulate and what will stifle strategic alliances. Obviously, you need to have the basic enabling environment, a good business environment, a good regulatory framework, good logistics, good infrastructure. That's at the very minimum. We then need to learn from the private sector what works, what does not. And in a way, most of these strategic alliances are risks. It's just another form of taking a risk. You try it out, you test it out, and you succeed. Where you fail, you learn again, and you move on.
The challenge that SMEs are facing today is that our tent has been taken away, and we are busy discussing or busy in our own world. The tent is that 2/3 of the market, 2/3 of international trade today does not happen between the company as it used to be 25 years ago, but happens within the intermediaries, within the relationship, strategic partnerships of transnational corporation, multinational companies, and so on and so forth. It has become increasingly very difficult today to enter into the market and to sustain your presence in the foreign markets. What is a strategic alliance, and where is the strategic element to this alliance? I'm not talking about the simple exporter-importer relationship, or maybe a relationship where an intermediary like agent is involved. A strategic alliance essentially comes when an alliance creates a unique value mutually in a relationship. Impatience is the problem number one. When you are interested in having a strategic alliance, what is the most important thing is that you have to have patience, you have to have clarity, a strategic dimension at the company level, you have to have a size. Typically, if you look at the world, there is a direct correlationship between size of a firm and their export capability. And usually it is an inverted bell-shaped curve. So smaller and medium enterprises are the one that has the maximum chance of becoming successful.